This week, there's been a lot of backlash over President Trump firing FBI Director James Comey.
Political analysts Wendy, Patrick, Laura, Fink now. They join us with more. Ladies, good morning. Always good to see you.
Good morning, Shelley.
Just this morning, President Trump threatening to cancel these press briefings because he's unhappy with the Comey coverage. This is not the first time that we've heard this, him not wanting to talk to the media. Laura, your thoughts?
Well, I think this is another distraction for Donald Trump because he wants people to look away from the fact that he fired the very independent investigator who was looking into his campaign's ties to Russia right at the moment that it appeared that more and more evidence was coming forward or could potentially come forward. We knew that Sally Yates's testimony suggested that he did know for 18 days and that the White House had been warned that their national security director had been compromised, and then he continued to receive intelligence briefings and be put on phone calls with Russian presidents. That's a huge problem. In addition, we saw subpoenas go out, and we also saw that the FBI has employed the Treasury Department to try to look at international wire transfers to see, in fact, if there was collusion and what the ties were. As the heat was turned up in the kitchen, Trump kicked James Comey out. That is tremendously suspect and something that we will continue to talk about. He's talking about the press because he doesn't want to focus on those facts.
Wendy?
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think President Trump anticipated the bipartisan blowback that the Comey firing has landed him. You know, it's been an administration, at least in the eyes of his detractors, where all roads don't lead to Rome, they lead to Russia. And that has been dominating the news cycle since he was a campaigner, candidate Trump, then president-elect, now president, and we're still talking about these ties. Now, obviously, President Trump has his own version of why he fired Director Comey, but has changed that several times in the last couple of days. And circling back to your question about the press briefings, it has been one of those things that the press secretaries have been scrambling to attempt to give the media answers to their excellent questions. Obviously, these are tough questions, but that's hardball in the press room. But then when Donald Trump himself, when the president himself changes the answer, they then have to circle back and try to make the different answers consistent. They've got tough jobs. Yep. I wouldn't want to trade with them for the world. We've got to give them at least a little bit of credit for doing everything they can to try to stay in front of a story that itself keeps changing.
The interesting thing to me is that this is not the first time that we're saying things like, well, they didn't anticipate the reaction from people in the public, et cetera, et cetera. It's not the first time that's happened. Let's talk about the tweet from this morning saying where the president said, well, there better not be any tapes of our conversations before he starts leaking to the press, talking about James Comey. What does that mean? Is that a threat? Is that a warning? How is James Comey, for example, supposed to take a tweet like this?
Well, I like to think of the phrase, if you ask the wrong questions, you don't have to worry about the answers. If we're talking about his making threats to James Comey about whether or not he will be leaking things to the press in the wake of his firing, then we're not talking about the firing itself. Again, this is a classic Trump technique. We all know that he is very comfortable in a falsehood. We all know that he is very comfortable trying to change the subject, and that is exactly what these tweets this morning do, or attempt to do. And I think that, again, the gravity of this cannot be underestimated. We're talking about a foreign power interfering with our election, and a campaign and members of that campaign, and we need to find out how many, may have colluded with Russia to make that happen. We need to get to the bottom of that, and the way that we do that is we have an independent investigator. We've heard calls for that from both sides of the aisle in Congress, and we will see a lot. Rod Rosenstein, who is the Deputy Attorney General, because don't forget, the Attorney General actually had to recuse himself because he made false statements to Congress. So this mire continues to thicken, and it's something that we need an independent prosecutor to sort out.
Wendy, I want your thoughts on that as well, and also your thoughts on the tweet this morning about you better not leak the tapes. What do you think?
President Trump should stop tweeting. He should stop talking.
Well, that's not going to happen.
Right, I know. You know, let me kind of answer both questions at once. The issue of the conversations with Director Comey. The FBI is characterized in the eyes of the American people and even the people that work there with independence and integrity. If one of those two things are compromised, it would be impossible to conduct a fair and full investigation. Director Comey, at least according to some of the criticisms that President Trump made of him, appears to be saying he couldn't pledge his loyalty to President Trump because his loyalty is to the American people, but he could pledge his honesty. Now, even that information is from leaks because remember, President Trump will go on record with either a host, a news host, or tweet himself and contradict some of this. With respect to the Russia investigation, you heard one of the things President Trump said yesterday is he wants to get to the bottom of it. He doesn't want anything to have interfered with the electoral process. But then at the same time, the optics of the firing makes even those statements suspect. So it's one of those things where we either let the investigation play out, whether the FBI does it or whether a special prosecutor does it, whoever they report to, or we're going to have to find another way to get to the bottom of this because it's not going away anytime soon. The president himself said as much yesterday, and we'll continue to understand that.
Wendy Patrick, Laura Fink, thank you both. More to come, I'm sure.
All right, thanks, Raul.
Thank you.